Don't drink plain water again after 60. This one trick boosts blood flow instantly. What if the glass of water you've been reaching for every single day is only doing half the job now that you're over 60? That sounds dramatic, I know. For decades, the advice has been simple. Drink more water. Stay hydrated. Keep a bottle nearby. And yes, hydration matters. In fact, after 60, it may matter more than ever. But here's the part almost nobody explains clearly enough. As you age, your circulation doesn't just need fluid, it needs support. Your blood vessels are not the same at 65 or 75 as they were at 25. They become less flexible, less responsive, less efficient at widening when your body needs more blood flow. And that means plain water by itself may not be the most strategic thing in your glass anymore. NIH Medline Plus Clinical Science Review. Today, I'm going to show you 5 research-backed drinks you can use to turn ordinary hydration into something much more powerful for aging blood vessels. We're counting down from 5 to 1. And number 1 is the drink with the strongest. This could change how your body feels today, potential. Because some of its effects can begin fast. Not magic fast, not miracle fast, but biologically fast. In one human study, the top drink on today's list affected aortic blood pressure in about 30 minutes. We'll get there in just a few minutes. Beetroot Crossover Study. And before we dive in, I want to ask you something, because it helps me understand exactly who I'm talking to. How old are you right now? And what bothers you most at this stage of life? Cold feet, tired legs, high blood pressure, brain fog, low energy? If you're comfortable, leave your age and your biggest frustration in the comments. I read those comments, and they tell me what real people are dealing with behind the lab numbers and headlines. Now, let me make one thing clear so we stay honest from the beginning. I am not telling you to stop drinking water. That would be nonsense. Plain water still matters. Hydration still matters. But after 60, the smarter question is not just, am I drinking enough? The smarter question is, can 1 or 2 of my daily drinks actually help my circulation while they hydrate me? That is the trick. Not more liquid, more intelligent liquid. Because vascular aging is real. The lining of your blood vessels, what scientists call the endothelium, becomes less effective over time. Nitric oxide signaling drops. Oxidative stress rises. Arteries get stiffer. Think of it like a garden hose that still works, but it's not as elastic as it used to be. Water can flow through it, yes, but if the hose can't relax properly, the pressure changes, the flow changes, and the entire system works harder than it should. And there's another layer most people miss. As we age, many of us become less sensitive to thirst. That means some older adults are not only drinking suboptimally, they're also missing the body's own early warning signs. So, if you've ever reached the afternoon and realized you felt heavy, tired, dry, sluggish, or strangely foggy, sometimes it's not just age. Sometimes it's a circulation and hydration problem happening at the same time. That is exactly why today's list matters. These are not miracle cures. They are not replacements for medical treatment. And they are definitely not an excuse to ignore serious symptoms like chest pain, severe shortness of breath, sudden swelling, or signs of stroke. But they are practical, evidence-backed ways to make your hydration routine do more work for you. So, let's start the countdown. Number 5. Pomegranate water. This one surprises people because pomegranate often gets talked about like a luxury juice, not a circulation tool. But from a vascular perspective, it deserves much more respect than it usually gets. Pomegranate is rich in polyphenols, especially compounds that help fight oxidative stress. And if you're over 60, oxidative stress matters because it directly interferes with nitric oxide, the molecule that helps blood vessels relax and widen. When nitric oxide gets neutralized too quickly, blood vessels lose some of their ability to respond smoothly. That can translate into more resistance, more strain, and a circulation system that feels older than it needs to. Clinical science review. In a small pilot clinical trial involving hypertensive men, pomegranate juice led to significant reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure after consumption. The endothelial markers in that study did not move enough to reach statistical significance, and the trial had limitations, including a small sample and no control group. So, I'm not putting pomegranate at number 1, but it did show enough promise to earn a place on this list, especially as an easy starting point for people who want something simple and pleasant tasting. Pomegranate Pilot Trial. Here's why I like it specifically for older viewers. Number 1, it's approachable. Number 2, it gives you a way to improve the quality of a drink you may already enjoy. And number 3, it's gentle. Not weak, but gentle. It doesn't feel like treatment. It feels like a small daily upgrade that can fit into real life. If this sounds like you, listen closely. Maybe you're not the person who's ready to buy powders and concentrates and measure out exact dosages. Maybe you just want to start by replacing one boring glass of plain water with something that actually feels supportive. Pomegranate is that kind of entry point. The best way to use it is not as a giant sugary juice bomb. That defeats the purpose. Instead, add a small amount of pure pomegranate juice to water so the drink becomes lighter, more hydrating, and less sugar-dense than drinking a full large glass of juice on its own. If you can find unsweetened pomegranate juice, even better. A simple option is 2 to 4 ounces of pure pomegranate juice diluted in 8 to 12 ounces of water, ideally with a meal or earlier in the day. That gives you flavor, hydration, and the polyphenol angle without turning it into a dessert. And here's the synergy move that makes this even smarter. Pair it with a handful of walnuts or a meal that includes healthy fats. Many polyphenol-rich foods seem to work best as part of an overall heart-supportive eating pattern, not in isolation. So think of this drink as part of a vascular support routine, not a standalone event. Now, pomegranate is a solid place to begin, but number 4 gets much more interesting because it doesn't just speak to blood flow, it speaks to something millions of adults over 60 struggle with and often accept as just part of aging, when it really shouldn't be ignored. Number 4, tart cherry water. If your nights are broken, your joints feel irritated, and your mornings start with stiffness instead of momentum, this one may speak directly to you. Tart cherry is not just about sleep, and it's not just about soreness. What makes it useful for older adults is that it sits at the intersection of inflammation, recovery, vascular strain, and rest. And after 60, those 4 things start feeding into each other. Here's what I mean. When you don't sleep well, stress signaling tends to climb. When stress signaling climbs, blood pressure regulation often gets worse. When inflammation stays elevated, blood vessels can become less responsive. And when you feel sore, tired, or unrested, you move less. Then your circulation gets even less help from regular activity. It becomes a cycle. Tart cherry gives you a way to interrupt that cycle from more than one angle. A 12-week randomized controlled trial in adults aged 65 to 80 found that tart cherry juice lowered C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker, and favorably affected oxidative stress-related measures. The same body of work also suggests tart cherry may help lower systolic blood pressure and LDL cholesterol, likely at least in part because of its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Tart cherry biomarker study. There is also a smaller study in older adults with insomnia showing tart cherry juice had modest beneficial effects on sleep, especially on insomnia severity and time awake after sleep onset. I want to stress the word modest because that honesty matters. This is not a knockout sleeping pill, and it is not stronger than established medical insomnia treatments. But for the right person, modest can still be meaningful, especially if your goal is to support better evenings, calmer nights, and a less inflamed next day. Tart Cherry Sleep Study. That's why Tart Cherry belongs on this list. Not because it gives you the biggest immediate blood flow effect, but because it improves the environment your circulation has to function inside. Think of it like this. If beetroot is the drink that helps open the roadway, Tart Cherry helps reduce the traffic and irritation building around that roadway. Different job, same mission. And if you've ever noticed that your circulation feels worse when you're inflamed, tired, or recovering poorly, you already understand this intuitively. Maybe your fingers feel stiffer. Maybe your legs feel heavy. Maybe your blood pressure runs higher after bad sleep. Your body is telling you these systems are connected. A practical way to use Tart Cherry is 1 to 2 tablespoons of unsweetened Tart Cherry concentrate diluted in water in the evening, or a moderate portion of Tart Cherry juice cut with water if you prefer a lighter taste. Evening makes sense for many people because that's when the sleep angle becomes most relevant. And here's the move I like most with this one. Don't drink it with a big sugary snack. If you want Tart Cherry to feel like support rather than dessert, keep it clean. Let it be part of a calming evening rhythm instead of a sweet craving ritual. Now, let me say something important before we move on. A lot of older viewers are not looking for peak performance. They're looking for steadier days, better mornings, less stiffness, less dragging, more willingness to go for the walk, climb the stairs, visit the store, or enjoy time with family. That is why number 4 matters. It's not flashy, it's functional. And number 3 is where we start shifting back toward a more direct blood vessel conversation. But before we go there, if you've been getting real value from this so far, take 1 second to subscribe and tap the like button. It genuinely helps this information reach more adults who are trying to age with strength instead of confusion. There are too many people over 60 living with preventable decline simply because nobody explained the basics in a clear, practical way. So, if this channel helps you, help me get it in front of the next person who needs it. All right, number 3. Number 3, green tea water. This is the quiet overachiever on the list. Green tea rarely gets the emotional spotlight because it doesn't sound dramatic, it doesn't sound exotic, it doesn't have the shocking color of beetroot or the "wow, really" reputation of hibiscus. But vascularly, it is one of the most interesting drinks you can keep in rotation. Why? Because green tea appears to improve endothelial function, that same all-important ability of blood vessels to respond properly. And it may do so through a mix of compounds rather than a single superhero ingredient. In one human study, green tea improved flow-mediated dilation, which is a standard measure of endothelial function. Interestingly, isolated EGCG alone did not reproduce the full effect, suggesting the whole drink may matter more than one isolated compound. Green tea endothelial function study. That detail is more important than it sounds. It tells us something many people miss in nutrition. Sometimes the body responds better to a real food or real drink matrix than to a single extracted ingredient sold as the active compound. In other words, your circulation may respond not just to EGCG, but to the orchestra of compounds present in actual green tea. And that matters after 60 because aging blood vessels are not usually dealing with one isolated problem. They're dealing with several at once. Lower nitric oxide availability, more oxidative stress, more inflammation, and less flexibility. A multi-compound drink can make sense in that context. Clinical Science Review Green Tea Endothelial Function Study. Now, let's talk practical reality. A lot of people over 60 are already drinking coffee in the morning. Nothing wrong with that for many people. But if your first 2 or 3 beverages are coffee, and plain water, you may be missing an easy vascular support window somewhere in the day. Green tea fits beautifully into that gap. Late morning or early afternoon is often ideal. Not too late if caffeine affects your sleep. Not on a completely empty stomach if tea bothers you. Just a calm, strategic cup in the part of the day where people often start feeling the first little dip in energy. And here's where the channel style matters, because this is the type of explanation your audience responds to. Think of green tea like a daily tune-up rather than a rescue drink. Beetroot is the one you use when you want a more noticeable nitrate-driven push. Green tea is the one you use because small improvements done consistently can change how the whole system behaves over time. If you're someone who says, "I don't have dramatic symptoms, I just feel older in my body than I used to," green tea is especially worth considering. There's also an identity payoff here. People who age well usually don't rely on one miracle fix. They stack quiet advantages. They give the body repeated signals of support. They build better baseline function. Green tea fits that philosophy perfectly. Preparation matters more than people realize. If you scorch green tea with boiling water and let it turn aggressively bitter, many people won't stick with it. Use hot, not violently boiling water. Steep it a few minutes. Keep it pleasant enough that it becomes repeatable. Because the best healthy drink is not the one with the most impressive study title. It's the one you will actually keep using. If you want to make it even smarter, squeeze in a little lemon. It brightens the taste, and many people find that makes green tea easier to drink consistently. Consistency is underrated in health. Boring, maybe. Powerful. Absolutely. Now, green tea is steady. Green tea is elegant. Green tea is the kind of thing your blood vessels quietly thank you for. But number 2 is much more dramatic. Number 2 is the one that makes people say, "How did I not know this already?" Number 2, hibiscus water. This deep red tea may be one of the most underappreciated blood pressure drinks sitting in plain sight. And honestly, I think one reason people underestimate it is because it looks too simple. It's a flower. It's tea. It doesn't come with the aura of a prescription bottle or an expensive wellness product. So, people assume it's gentle in the weak sense of the word. It isn't weak. It's gentle in the elegant sense of the word. Clinical research has repeatedly found hibiscus can help lower blood pressure. In one randomized control trial involving people with stage 1 hypertension, drinking hibiscus tea twice daily alongside lifestyle modification led to significantly greater reductions in systolic and diastolic blood pressure than lifestyle modification alone. Hibiscus RCT. And another well-known clinical trial reported through USDA and TUS found that adults drinking 3 cups of hibiscus tea daily for 6 weeks had greater systolic blood pressure reductions than those drinking a placebo beverage. In the subgroup with higher starting systolic pressure, the reductions were even more striking. USDA TUS report. Now stop and think about what that means emotionally for the audience this channel serves. There are millions of adults over 60 walking around feeling their pulse in their temples, watching home blood pressure numbers too closely, wondering whether every stressful week is pushing them further in the wrong direction. Many of them are not asking for perfection. They are asking for leverage, something simple they can do consistently that doesn't make them feel powerless. That is where hibiscus shines. It gives the viewer a feeling of participation in their own care, a cup, a routine, a visible color, a daily act that feels intentional. And yes, that emotional component matters because health routines work better when people can feel themselves doing something meaningful. What I also like about hibiscus is that it makes a very clear on-screen teaching moment. You can explain that healthy blood flow is not only about getting blood moving fast, it's about helping blood vessels relax when they should. That distinction matters because many viewers think blood flow only means energy or warmth in the legs. but vascular function is also about resistance, elasticity, and how hard the heart has to work to move blood through the system. That's why lowering blood pressure and supporting blood vessel function belong in the same conversation. A practical way to use hibiscus is 1 or 2 cups a day, unsweetened if possible. If the tartness is too much, you can dilute it or add a little cinnamon or a small amount of a non-sugar sweetener you tolerate well. What I would avoid is turning it into a sugary punch, because then you create a different problem. And here's the really important caution with hibiscus, and this is where your channel's credibility can separate itself from weaker channels. If someone is already on blood pressure medication, hibiscus is one of the drinks on this list that deserves a real conversation with a clinician. Not because it's dangerous in a sensational sense, but because anything that genuinely influences blood pressure belongs in the context of the full medication picture. That warning does not weaken the script. It strengthens it, because it tells the viewer, I'm not here to hype you, I'm here to guide you responsibly. And responsible guidance is exactly what builds trust with older audiences. Now, if hibiscus is the drink that makes many people say, why didn't anyone tell me this? Number 1 is the drink that makes people say, wait, this can start working that quickly? Here we go. Number 1, beetroot water. If there is one drink on this list that best matches the title of this video, this is it. Beetroot. Not because it is trendy, not because it is magical, but because it plugs directly into one of the most important circulation pathways in the aging body, nitric oxide. Let me explain this in the clearest way possible. Beets are rich in dietary nitrate. When you consume nitrate from foods like beetroot, your body can convert it through a nitrate-nitrite nitric oxide pathway. That nitric oxide helps blood vessels relax and widen. And when blood vessels relax and widen, blood can move more efficiently. Pressure can ease, and tissues can receive oxygen more effectively. Clinical Science Review, Beetroot Crossover Study. Why does this matter so much after 60? Because one of the major features of vascular aging is reduced nitric oxide bioavailability. In simple language, the signal that tells your blood vessels to loosen up gets weaker with age. Oxidative stress increases, the endothelium works less efficiently, and the whole system can become more rigid than it used to be. That is part of why some older adults notice higher blood pressure, less exercise tolerance, colder hands and feet, heavier legs, or just that hard-to-describe sense that their circulation is not what it was. Clinical Science Review. Now, here's why beetroot earns the #1 spot. In one placebo-controlled crossover study, a single dose of nitrate-rich beetroot juice lowered aortic systolic blood pressure within about 30 minutes. Not brachial blood pressure in a dramatic all-day way, not a lifetime transformation from one sip, but a measurable short-term vascular effect in the part of the circulation that really matters. That is a big reason the title promise can be made responsibly, if we frame it correctly. Instantly in internet language is often silly, but within the hour in physiology language, that's real territory for beetroot. Beetroot Crossover Study. There's more. Newer research from the University of Exeter suggests nitrate-rich beetroot juice in older adults may lower blood pressure partly by changing the oral microbiome, specifically by reducing less helpful mouth bacteria and increasing bacteria linked to healthier nitrate conversion. That matters because the mouth is not just where the drink enters, it is part of the chemistry. The body uses oral bacteria as part of the conversion process that ultimately helps generate nitric oxide. University of Exeter. That also explains something many viewers have never heard before. If you use strong antibacterial mouthwash all the time, especially right around nitrate-rich foods or drinks, you may be interfering with part of that nitrate to nitric oxide pathway. That doesn't mean never use mouthwash. It means the body is more interconnected than people think. Now, because this channel style works best when science becomes vivid, let me give you the image. Nitric oxide is like a text message sent to your blood vessels that says, "You can open now." When you're young, those messages usually go through more easily. As you age, more of those messages get delayed, weakened, or blocked. Beetroot helps resend the message. That is why people often describe nitrate-rich beet drinks as making them feel a little more open, a little warmer, a little more capable during walking or activity. Not buzzed, not stimulated in the caffeine sense, just more hydraulically efficient. And that matters in daily life more than people realize. Because improved blood flow is not just about exercise performance. It's about climbing stairs with less strain, about feeling less wiped out after errands. It's about whether your morning walk feels like work or momentum. It's about how much support your muscles and brain receive when you ask your body to do ordinary things. Now, I do need to keep this balance because honesty is part of what makes a health script persuasive. Not every longer-term beetroot study in older adults has shown sustained blood pressure or vascular function improvements, especially in people already being treated for hypertension. One 4-week study found nitrate levels clearly increased, proving the pathway was active, but it did not show significant sustained changes in vascular function or ambulatory blood pressure compared with placebo in that specific group. But notice what that means. It does not mean beetroot doesn't work. It means context matters, dose matters, timing matters, individual biology matters, medication status matters, and acute effects are not always identical to long-term outcomes. That is exactly how real physiology works, which is why I still rank beetroot number 1. The mechanism is strong, the acute data are compelling, and the older adult-specific research remains promising enough to justify real attention. So, how do you actually use it? You have a few good options. The first is beetroot juice. The second is beetroot powder mixed into water. Powder is often more practical because it's easy to store and easy to portion. Juice may feel more natural to some people, but it also varies more in taste and concentration. A smart starting approach is a modest serving earlier in a day, or roughly 1 to 2 hours before your most active period. That might be before your walk, before gardening, before physical therapy, or before the part of the day when you typically want your legs and energy to feel most reliable. The exact amount depends on the product because powders and juices vary, so the key is to use a product with clearly stated nitrate content, or at least a transparent ingredient profile. And here's a tip many people love once they learn it. Don't judge beetroot by the first sip. Some people try it once, decide it tastes earthy, and give up. Mix it with water, chill it, maybe add lemon, and give your palate a few chances. A lot of excellent habits start as not my favorite, and later become routine because the payoff is worth it. Another practical note: beets can turn urine or stool reddish. That can surprise people if they're not expecting it. Usually it's harmless pigment, not blood. Knowing that in advance saves a lot of unnecessary panic. Now, let's go even deeper, because this is the part that really separates number 1 from everything else on the list. Beetroot doesn't just fit the topic of blood flow. It fits the psychology of your audience. Why? Because older viewers want to feel something that makes sense in the body. They want a change they can connect to. Movement, warmth, stamina, or a feeling of less effort. Beetroot is one of the few options on this list that has a legitimate pathway to producing that kind of "I notice something" response relatively quickly in some people. That makes it powerful. Not just physiologically, but behaviorally. When people notice a real difference, they stick with the habit. And when they stick with the habit becomes part of their identity. That is how good routines get built. Not by guilt, not by fear alone, by felt usefulness. So if you've been waiting for me to say, what is the one trick? Here it is in one sentence. After 60, stop treating hydration as a neutral chore and start using at least one daily glass as a targeted blood flow tool. That is the trick. Not abandoning water, upgrading water, strategic hydration. That could mean pomegranate water when you want an easy starting point, tart cherry water when you want support for inflammation and better nights, green tea water when you want a calm, endothelial-friendly daily tune-up, hibiscus water when blood pressure support is part of the conversation, and beetroot water when you want the strongest nitric oxide-centered option on the list. Now, let me bring all of this together because I don't want you leaving with 5 disconnected ideas. I want you leaving with one clear shift in how you think. After 60, your body is no longer asking for random effort. It is asking for precision. Your blood vessels have carried you through decades of stress, meals, movement, worries, celebration, recovery, and repair. They are still showing up for you every day, but they are not operating under the same conditions they were 30 or 40 years ago. And pretending otherwise is one reason so many people feel blindsided by fatigue, blood pressure changes, reduced stamina, and the slow creep of physical limitation. Clinical Science Review. The encouraging news is that small choices start mattering more, not less. One better drink, one better routine, one better daily signal to the body. That is how people begin to feel like they have some leverage again. And leverage is everything in later life. Because when blood flow improves even modestly, life can feel different in very practical ways. Walking feels less punishing. Standing feels steadier. Activity feels less expensive. Recovery feels less delayed. And perhaps most importantly, the day feels more like something you can participate in instead of something you are merely trying to get through. That is what this video is really about. Not beverages, participation, capability, independence, the ability to keep being yourself. So here's what I want you to do after this video ends. Don't try all 5 tomorrow. Pick one, the one that fits your biggest issue right now. If your concern is blood pressure, maybe hibiscus or beetroot is where you start. If your issue is broken sleep and inflammation, tart cherry may make more sense. If you want the easiest, elegant daily habit, green tea is a beautiful place to begin. If you want a gentle entry point, start with pomegranate. Make it real. Put it in your kitchen. Put it in your calendar. Put it where your old routine used to be. And if this gave you something useful today, subscribe to the channel. I put these videos together for people who are tired of vague advice and want practical, research-grounded ways to age better. Share this with someone over 60 who still thinks hydration is only about drinking more plain water. It may help them see their routine differently. And now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 are you most likely to try first? Pomegranate, tart cherry, green tea, hibiscus, or beetroot? Tell me in the comments. And if you already use one of them, tell me what you've noticed. Your experience could help someone else reading through those comments decide to take their first step. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next.